So if I were to title this, I guess it would be Managing Success. We've had a lot of success recently. These are good days for Wesley Douglas. We've got money flowing in, we've got students flowing in, new people are getting behind us and supporting us. New alliances are being formed, nations, and good opportunities are presenting themselves. So how do we manage our success? As the guy who's responsible for counting the money, and spending it. I like counting it more than spending it. But God's put on my heart to share a little bit on that subject. I'm always a little surprised when I see my name on the chapel calendar. I'm not ordained. I am not on the faculty. I'm just the guy who counts the money. But I think y'all like the history story, so you keep having me back.
Yes.
So where are we going to go today? Where are we going to go in history today? Well, we're going to go to 700 BC.
Whoa.
We're going back. Going back to Dr. Schreiner's time. And we're going to be in the Assyrian Empire, or Dr. Schreiner would say, the Neo-Assyrian Empire. It has different phases. We'll just stick with the Assyrian Empire. And for those of you that are a little rusty on the Assyrian Empire, it's like Nazi Germany got dropped in the ancient Near East without a British Empire or United States or Soviet Union to stop. They revolutionized warfare of the day and were running roughshod over everyone. And they had a big empire. And the question is, well, how do you keep an empire together, especially in the Middle East? We're all familiar, especially after America's involvement in the Middle East, we're all familiar with how rough things can be over there, how people operate over there. Well, it's kind of rough over there back then too. And so how do you keep all these people together? Well, the Assyrians thought, well, let's just be the meanest, baddest, most ruthless people we could possibly be. And just make sure, because it took a long time to get from point A to point B in the ancient Near East. You had to walk, or maybe at best ride a camel or a horse. So if you've got somebody that's 1,000 miles away ruling a province on your behalf, how do you make sure they don't just crown themselves king? Well, you make sure that they are scared to death of ever even thinking about rebelling against them. And so they ran roughshod over everyone. However, somebody did rebel. Somebody did stand up to them. And it was this tiny little kingdom called Judah, a king named Hezekiah. And if you read about Hezekiah in 2 Kings, you'll read that King Hezekiah did right in the eyes of the Lord. He was faithful to the Lord all the days of his life. And that there was no king like him before or after. He was a great king. This was a great king who had success. And God blessed him. A recurring theme through 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles is that God blessed him financially. Money was usually rolling in for Hezekiah. God blessed him. And there's nothing wrong with being blessed. There's nothing wrong with being blessed financially. There's nothing wrong with being a good steward. That's my job here that Matt hired me for, is being a good steward. There is something wrong with putting your faith in the blessings, though, putting your faith in the money, though. And Hezekiah was richly blessed. But Hezekiah, like all of us, yes, he did right in the eyes of the Lord. He was a faithful king. He still was not perfect. He had his shortcomings. He had trials and tribulations. And a trial and tribulation came in the form of Sennacherib at the head of the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians did not appreciate Hezekiah throwing off the yoke by refusing to be in a vassal suzerain relationship with them. They did not appreciate the rebellion. And they decided they were going to come and do to Judah what they had done to so many others. They were going to make an example out of them. So he invades Judah, takes their towns and fortifications, besieging Jerusalem. And Chronicles doesn't touch on this, but Kings does. What is Hezekiah's first reaction? His first reaction, is he going to put his faith in God, or is he going to put faith in himself and in worldly riches and power? He puts his faith in worldly riches and power. He tries to buy off the Assyrians. He tries to send them money. And, how little Judah is going to buy off, and come to terms with this great worldly power is beyond me. Why they're going to take God's blessings and throw them away to try to strike a deal instead of relying on God is again, But it's Nazi Germany, guys. They're there at the gates. They're there at the gates, and there is no RAF. There is no, United States Lend-Lease program to help out. It's just them, and you better hope the walls hold up. And Hezekiah tries to make a deal, and so he gives them 330 talents of silver and gold to try to get them to go away. Now, try to provide a little bit of context on what a talent is, because we don't know in this day and age. Is that a lot of money or is that a little money? Well, it's hard to tell, but Dr. Bernie Reynolds, ancient history professor, retired at Asbury University, once wrote a paper on the value of a talent. It was very interesting. Now, the context of this paper was during the Greco-Persian time of Alexander the Great, so different era of ancient history, but still, it, I think, can be informative. According to Dr. Reynolds, a talent was worth 6,000 drachma, and a single drachma was a day's wages for a skilled laborer. So one talent would employ 6,000 people for one day. Sennacherib wanted 330. No wonder they were stripping the gold off the doors of the temple. They were scrounging together everything they could possibly get to try to avert this threat, to try to buy off Sennacherib. And like is often the case when we rely on our own wealth and our own talents and abilities, instead of taking it straight to the Lord, it backfired, it didn't work. Now, Kings is not particularly clear over the timeline on this. Maybe Sennacherib went away and then he came back, or maybe he just took the money and said, I'm not leaving, because the Assyrians are those kind of people. And either way, he's outside the gates of Jerusalem. And he sent a general and an army to Jerusalem to come and to finish the job. And we're familiar with the story. This time, Hezekiah repents. This time, Hezekiah is laid out face down on the temple floor, laying out the words of the Assyrian general that he blasphemed God with. And is saying, God, redeem your good name here. Redeem us, protect us. He's laying it all out to the Lord. They're broke, they got nothing left. All the fortifications outside of Jerusalem have been taken. It's him and God. And God saves them. God saves them. He goes and destroys I love it. There's this long passage of God's message to the general of Assyria and to Sennacherib. And then at the end of the long passage where God says basically all the things he's going to do to them, it just says, the angel of the Lord went out in the night and slew the entire army. Mm-hmm. Wow. And Sennacherib withdraws in disgrace, goes home, and is eventually killed by two of his sons. Ironically, while he's worshiping his God. So, your God couldn't save you, Hezekiah's could. And then God repaid Hezekiah for the years the locusts had eaten. It says in Kings that Hezekiah was respected in all the nations, that gifts started flowing in. I mean, this was the shock around the world. The mighty Assyrian army was destroyed. This was noticed, and people started taking note of little old Judah. Gifts. They were sending sacrifices. They were excited. Hey, there's something happening here. And Hezekiah gets sick. And Isaiah comes to him and says, get your affairs in order. You're going to die. And Hezekiah weeps and he goes before the Lord. And Isaiah comes back and says, God says you're going to get 15 more years. And Hezekiah asks for a sign. It's funny. I mean, like, it's Isaiah, man, just take his word for it. But, he's human. He's human. He wants a sign because apparently, he's dying. He clearly does not feel well. If any of we've all been sick before, you wanted to end that moment. You're on the floor praying. So he he wants a sign. So God makes the shadow move back 10 steps. Now, how did he do that? Did he just move the shadow, or did he do something with the sun or the heavens and earth? I don't know, but he moved the shadow back 10 steps. And I do know this. The Babylonians are subject matter experts at the time on the sun, moon, and stars. Entire libraries have been written in Babylonian culture on omens from the sun, moon, and stars, and from animal sacrifices. It's amazing how much intelligence they had, and they completely misdirected it in the occult, and things that were hocus pocus. But they had their faculty journals, and they had their scholars, and they published on what the star was going to predict for their future. It was, and anyhow, they took notice. They noticed a miracle had happened in Judah, and they wanted to find out. The world, when we're blessed, sometimes is curious. They want to come find out. And so the Babylonians send envoys, not with an army, but with gifts. They come to Jerusalem with gifts to find out what is so special about this place. God put Israel there for a reason, to be a beacon to the world. And so here's the world coming to find out, hey, what's so special about you guys? And maybe the Babylonians are also there. I mean, you can tell they're thinking about their next move. They're tired of being under the Assyrians. They're probably wanting to talk strategy, wanting to talk diplomacy, maybe form an alliance. They want to come see what's going on. So when you read 2 Chronicles Kings, what does Hezekiah shows him his money? He doesn't, now it doesn't. He doesn't show them the temple. He doesn't tell them about Yahweh, how it was God who saved Israel. He shows all his temporal wealth and his temporal abilities. Now, maybe he did take them to the temple, but the overarching theme of the passage is that he relies on the blessings. He's showing off the blessings. He's not talking about Yahweh and his deliverance. And Isaiah confronts him one. Who are those people? Babylonians. What did you show them? Everything. Well, then everything is what they will take. Why did you do that? Why did you show them all that? Because, I've heard Dr. Oswald compare this moment to the biggest bankers from New York. Because Babylon was the New York of the day. These guys basically invented futures contracts and futures trading. These guys were the bankers of the day. They had the money and the wealth. And Dr. Oswald compared this to the biggest bankers from New York come to some small rural town, and the mayor proudly shows them the vault of their community bank. New York? You're trying to impress New York? You're trying to impress Babylon? That's something we need to remember. The world, in a worldly sense, is always going to have a bigger fish. But that said, God is not stingy with his blessings. Hezekiah probably did have a decent amount to show off. And the mistake was showing it off. I'm reminded, brief history side note, I was looking at the calendar the other day, and our board meeting is scheduled for Friday the 13th. It is. And I thought, back to the origins of Friday the 13th, and it's when the King of France rounded up the Knights Templar. Well, why did he do that? Well, a few years earlier, there was a riot in Paris. His king and the Knights Templar took him into their bank in Paris to protect him, give him a safe place to stay. He sat around in that vault looking at all those stacks and stacks of gold that they had. He got ideas. Be careful who you allow to bank vaults of your life. Be careful who you allow into the bank vaults of your church. Be careful. They may be Babylonians. They may have bad intentions. Be careful. So don't lean on your wealth. We know how it ends for Judah. Doesn't happen in Hezekiah's lifetime, but his descendants are doomed. Those same Babylonian envoys, they go back to Babylon and they probably say, hey, these guys are rich. We could we could use these guys on our team. We could probably extract some things from them too. And eventually Judah does to Babylon and to Assyria what they had been doing all along to the Lord, and that is switching sides, back and forth, back and forth. We'll be loyal, we'll be disloyal, we'll be loyal, we'll be disloyal. And God gave them over to the world, and the world doesn't like that. And Babylon wound up coming and crushing and taking everything. They wanted to play the world's game. God let them. They lost. And so we got to be careful. We got to be careful when we get blessings from God and we suddenly start thinking we're a big deal. Be careful. You play the world's game, you'll lose. Be careful. You know, in closing, I'll close with a story, another history story. This one told by Dr. McKinley in one of his chapel messages at Asbury University. It's about World War I. It's about the funeral of the Austrian Emperor Franz Joseph I. World War I was much different than World War II. There were good men on both sides. Not trying to create a false equivalency, obviously. I'm on the side of the Brits and the Americans, but there were good people on both sides. And I've heard it described as the war in which Western civilization committed suicide. It was a tragic war, very unnecessary. And Franz Joseph I is the Emperor of Austria-Hungary. They're in the alliance with the Ottoman Empire and the German Empire. And the Habsburgs are, and at this time especially, they're a devout Catholic family. And he had been emperor for a long time. He was in his 80s. He was crowned Emperor of Austria-Hungary, or Emperor of Austria at the time, eventually became Austria-Hungary, in 1848. And it is now 1916. And he passes away, a man full of cares, full of worries, watching his empire fall apart. But he'd been emperor for well over 60 years. So there's a big funeral for him, much like the Queen of England we saw earlier this year. Big funeral for him. Grand, all the grandees from the empire are there, foreign dignitaries. It's a wonderful procession. It takes hours, for it to go from beginning to end as it proceeds towards the historical abbey where all the Habsburg emperors were buried. He's going to go be buried with his fathers. And it's a grand occasion. They get to the abbey and they proceed with a tradition of the Habsburg family that I believe is still carried out to this day. The grand marshal of the parade, the entire army and parade and dignitaries, band, everybody behind him. He marches up to the door of the abbey where they're going to go bury him. And he raps on the door with his sword, the hilt of his sword. And the abbot on the other side of the door says, "Who goes there?" And he responds with the full title of Franz Joseph I, Emperor of Austria-Hungary. "We bring you Franz Joseph I, His Imperial and Royal Apostolic Majesty, by the grace of God, Emperor of Austria, King of Hungary and Bohemia, Dalmatia, Croatia, Slavonia, Galicia, Lodomeria, and Illyria, King of Jerusalem, Archduke of Austria, Grand Duke of Tuscany and Krakow, Duke of Lorraine." There are a dozen other titles that follow after that. "We know him not. He cannot enter." Silence. Everyone's standing there. So the chamberlain knocks on the door again. "Who goes there?" This time he answers with the abbreviated, more convenient title. "We bring you Franz Joseph I, His Imperial Royal Apostolic Majesty, Emperor of Austria, King of Hungary. We know him not. He cannot enter." Silence. This time he gets on his knees. Someone else goes up to the door and knocks with their hand. "Who goes there?" "We bring you our brother Joseph, a sinner like us all." And the door's open. He can go be buried with his fathers. If only the Habsburgs had that level of humility when Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, history would have been different. Many lives would have been saved. So as we go forth, as we're successful, as God blesses us with alliances, with people, with money, He blesses our careers. Let's just remember who the giver is. Let's remember that all the titles, the degrees, and the alliances, the money, at the end of the day, they don't matter. Jesus Christ matters and our faithfulness to Him. Thank you.